Sometimes you don't realize how much someone means to you until you look back at everything you survived and see how often their presence was quietly holding you together. And then one day the truth hits you harder than you ever expected. I thought I could do this alone. But I can't. Please stay close. I used to believe that being strong meant never needing anyone. I thought strength was carrying every problem in silence. I thought strength meant saying, I'm fine, even when my heart was falling apart. I thought asking someone to stay close would make me look weak, dependent, or afraid. But life has a way of teaching you the truth. Sometimes strength isn't pretending you don't need anyone. Sometimes strength is finally admitting that there are people whose presence makes life easier to survive. There are people who don't solve every problem for you, but somehow, when they're near, the problem doesn't feel quite as heavy. And maybe that's what you became to me. I didn't understand it at first. Maybe I took you for granted. Pawns. Maybe I thought you'd always be there. Pauline, maybe I got so used to your kindness that I stopped noticing how rare it was. Balin, you were there during conversations I barely remember, but you remembered how I felt. You were there when I was tired, when I was confused, when I was chasing dreams that didn't seem to make sense to anyone else. You were there in moments that seemed ordinary at the time, but when I look back now, I realize those ordinary moments were some of the most important parts of my life. And that's the strange thing about love. Sometimes you don't recognize its value while you're standing inside it. You recognize it when you almost lose it. You recognize it when the silence becomes louder than you expected. You recognize it when you go through your day and suddenly realize there is one person you want to tell everything to. Then something good happens and your first thought is, I wish you were here. And something terrible happens and your heart searches for the same person. And suddenly you understand. It was never just about having someone around. It was about who that person became in your life. Jal, maybe you don't save me from every storm. Maybe you can't fix everything that's broken inside me. Bane, but somehow you make me believe that I can survive a storm, and that matters more than you know. Looking back, I realized there were moments when I was barely holding myself together, and you didn't even know it. Maybe you simply sent a message at the right time. Maybe you asked how my day was when everyone else assumed I was fine. Maybe you made me laugh when I had forgotten what laughter felt like. Small things. Things that probably meant nothing to you. But sometimes the smallest kindness arrives at the exact moment a person is about to give up. And I think that's what makes me emotional when I look back. You probably don't even realize how many times you helped me without knowing it. How many days became easier because you existed somewhere in them. How many nights felt less lonely because I knew I could talk to you. How many doubts became smaller because you believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. I used to think I was giving myself all the credit for surviving, and maybe I did fight some difficult battles alone. But if I'm honest, I wasn't completely alone. There was your voice. There was your presence. There was the memory of your encouragement. There was the thought that somewhere, somehow, someone cared. And sometimes that is enough to keep a person going. We underestimate what it means to be cared for. Then we think love has to be dramatic to be powerful. We imagine grand gestures, expensive gifts, perfect words, unforgettable moments. But some of the deepest forms of love are almost invisible. Someone remembering that you have an important day. Someone asking whether you got home safely. Someone noticing that you're quieter than usual. Someone giving you time instead of demanding explanations. And someone sitting beside you when you don't have the energy to talk. To lean to you, that kind of love doesn't always make headlines, but it changes lives. And when I look back now, I realize that you were there in more ways than I ever understood. Maybe I never thanked you properly. Maybe I was too distracted. Maybe I was too proud. Maybe I assumed you already knew. But there are things people need to hear, even when we think they already know them. Shamblanger. So let me say this. You matter to me. You matter to me more than I knew how to explain. And perhaps that's why the idea of you becoming distant hurts more than I expected. Because now I understand what your absence would mean. It's easy to imagine being independent when the person you love is still close enough to reach. It's easy to say I'll be fine when you secretly know they are only one call away. Man's but distance has a way of exposing the truth. Landalencha. The moment you realize you can no longer reach someone the way you once could, you begin to understand every moment you failed to appreciate. And regret is a difficult teacher. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. It whispers when you remember a conversation you should have had. It whispers when you realize you were too busy to notice someone trying to love you. Langens to men. Man sanctans. It whispers when you remember the moments you chose pride over honesty, and suddenly you wish you could go back. Not to change everything, just to change the moments when you should have said stay. Maybe that's all I should have said. Stay close when life gets complicated. Stay close when I become quiet. Stay close when I don't know how to explain what I'm feeling. Bleed splinching, stay close when I act stronger than I actually am, not because I expect you to carry me, but because there's something about knowing you're there that reminds me I can carry myself. Jen, that's an important difference. I don't want to make you responsible for my happiness. I don't want to place the entire weight of my life on your shoulders. No one person should have to become another person's entire world. Leans. But I want you to know that being loved by you has made my world better. And sometimes admitting that isn't weakness, sometimes it is gratitude. Men, there is a difference between saying, I cannot survive without you, and saying, my life is stronger because you're in it. Real love should not destroy your ability to stand alone. Lamenges. It should give you the courage to stand taller, knowing that when you turn around, someone you trust is still there, and maybe that's what I've been trying to understand. I don't need you because I am nothing without you. I need your presence because after knowing what it feels like to be truly seen, I don't want to go back to pretending I never needed connection. I don't want to spend my entire life proving that I can survive alone. If I have the chance to build something meaningful with someone who genuinely cares, what is the purpose of building walls so high that even love cannot reach you? Volkash. What is the point of becoming so independent that you have no one, with whom to share the life you've worked so hard to create? We were never meant to carry every burden alone. Even the strongest people need a place to rest. Even the bravest people sometimes need reassurance. Even the people who inspire everyone else sometimes go home and wish someone would ask them, how are you really doing? John, maybe you know that feeling. Maybe you're the strong one in your family. Beans, the person everyone calls when something goes wrong, the person who always knows what to say. Bams, the person who rarely asks for help, but even you get tired. Even you have moments when you wish someone would look past the version of you that everyone depends on and say, you don't have to be strong with me, and perhaps that's what you gave me, a place where I didn't always have to perform. Beans, a place where I could admit that I was uncertain, a place where I didn't have to have every answer. And looking back, I realize how rare that is. Man, the world is full of people who want the strongest version of you, the successful version, the happy version, the entertaining version. But the people who truly love you also make room for the tired version, the confused version, the broken version, the version that doesn't know what to do next. And if you were willing to make room for that version of me, then I hope you understand why I am asking you now. Please stay close, not because I want to trap you, not because I want to control your life. Jean, not because I expect you to give up your dreams to take care of mine. I want you to stay close because somewhere along the way you became important. Being more important than I allowed myself to admit. And I don't want pride to make me lose something my heart has already recognized as precious. When there are people who come into your life like a lesson, Shemitters, there are people who come into your life like a season. And then there are people who quietly become part of your foundation. You may not notice it while they're there, but remove them and suddenly you feel how much of your strength was connected to their presence. Lamb, maybe that sounds frightening. Maybe it is, because loving someone means admitting that they have the power to hurt you. The deeper the connection, the greater the risk. Jens, but refusing to love deeply just to avoid pain is another kind of loss. Lens. You can protect your heart so carefully that you never give it a chance to feel fully alive. Mens. You can convince yourself that needing no one is freedom, only to discover one day that the walls you built for protection became the prison you live inside. And I don't want that anymore. Mens. I don't want to be so afraid of losing you that I never tell you what you mean to me. Manda. I don't want another day to pass while I assume you'll somehow understand the things I'm too afraid to say. So I'm saying them now. Looking back, I realize I can't do this without you. Not because you are responsible for saving me, but because your love has reminded me that life was never meant to be survived in complete isolation. Mend, your presence has become a reminder that I don't have to fight every battle without anyone beside me. And if life gives me the chance to keep walking with you, I don't want to waste it pretending that your absence wouldn't change me. Then it would, because you matter. You have left your mark on my life. And whether I knew how to say it before or not, the truth is becoming impossible to ignore. Bands, when I look back at where I was, who I was, and how far I've come, I keep finding traces of you in the journey. I lay in the moments when I almost gave up, in the days when I needed hope, or in the memories that still make me smile. Bend in the version of myself that slowly learned it was okay to let someone in. And maybe that's why I finally understand something I should have understood long ago. Men, some people don't enter your life to make you weaker by making you dependent on them. Guys, some people enter your life to remind you that even the strongest journey becomes more meaningful when you don't have to walk it alone. And now that I've finally understood what you mean to me, I don't want to wait until distance teaches me the lesson one more time. Bend, I don't want to wake up someday wishing I had been braver. Demand, so if you can hear the truth behind everything I haven't said, hear this one thing clearly. Please stay close. Please stay close. Lynn, because I have spent too much of my life believing that love should always be effortless, that if someone truly belonged in your life, you would never have to ask them to stay, never have to admit that you miss them, never have to reveal how deeply their presence affects you. Beans. But I know better now. Sometimes the bravest thing you can say is, I don't want to lose you. Lane, sometimes love requires you to put your pride down before it destroys something your heart has been trying to protect. And sometimes you have to stop acting as if you're untouched by someone just because admitting the truth makes you vulnerable. And I am vulnerable. Bane, because when I look back, I see how easily I could have lost you without realizing what I was losing. Then I see the moments when you reached out and I answered carelessly. I see the times when you gave me your attention and I treated it like something that would always be available. Means I see the kindness I accepted without stopping to appreciate the person giving it. And I wish I could tell the older version of myself what I know now. I would say, pay attention. Bend, pay attention to the person who remembers what matters to you. Then pay attention to the one who stays when there's nothing exciting to gain. Films, pay attention to the one who sees through your smile. Bren, pay attention to the person who makes you feel less alone without ever asking for credit. Because one day, you may look around and realize that the person you barely noticed was one of the greatest blessings in your life. And that realization changes you. It makes you understand that love isn't always a lightning strike, Sometimes it is a quiet light that has been shining beside you for years, and one day you finally turn around and realize it has been guiding you through the darkness. Maybe that is what you have been to me, a quiet light, not loud, not demanding. Laminda's not constantly asking me to prove how much you matter. Jen, you simply existed in my life with a kind of presence that became more valuable the more I understood myself. And now when I think about moving forward without you, something inside me becomes honest. I can survive. But I don't want to pretend that surviving is the same as living fully. And yes, I could wake up and continue. I could work. I could chase my dreams. I could smile in front of people and convince the world that everything is fine. But some victories feel different when there is no one you truly want to share them with. Then some roads feel longer when the person you trusted is no longer walking near you. Some silences feel heavier when you realize the voice you were waiting for has disappeared. and I don't want us to become strangers, carrying memories of a closeness we were too afraid to protect. Mensa, I don't want our story to become one of those stories that begins with, we used to be so close. Mendan, I want us to keep choosing closeness, not because it will always be easy, because it matters. There will be times when we misunderstand each other. There will be moments when we are both tired. There will be days when life pulls us in different directions. But distance doesn't always begin when two people are physically far apart. Sometimes distance begins when two people stop saying what they really feel, when they stop asking questions. When they start assuming, when silence replaces honesty, when pride becomes more important than connection. And I don't want that to happen to us. If something hurts you, tell me. Mom, if I hurt you, don't carry it alone until resentment grows. If you need space, I will respect it. Stemblans, if you need reassurance, I hope you will let me give it. Ball, and if I become distant, don't let my silence convince you that you no longer matter. Sometimes people become quiet because of carrying things they don't know how to explain. That doesn't mean they don't need love. Sometimes that is when they need it most. I want us to learn each other's silence. Jen, not to assume what it means, but to become gentle enough to ask what's going on. Are you okay? Den, do you want to talk? And if the answer is no, I want us to know that love can still remain in the room. You don't always have to speak to be understood. Sometimes staying is enough. Lee, sometimes sitting beside someone in silence is the most honest thing you can do. I think we've forgotten the value of presence. Everyone is busy trying to say the perfect thing. Lands. But sometimes there are no perfect words. Sometimes someone doesn't need advice. They don't need a solution. They don't need to hear. Everything happens for a reason. Sometimes they just need to know they don't have to face the moment alone. And when I look back, I realize how many times your presence gave me that. You didn't always fix what was wrong. You didn't have to. Leans, you reminded me that I was not completely alone inside it. That is something I will never underestimate again. Leon, because the truth is, the strongest people you know are often carrying things you will never see. They may smile at you while fighting a battle they haven't told anyone about. They may encourage you while secretly wondering whether they can keep going themselves. They may say, I'm fine, because they don't want to become a burden. Imagine, so if you find someone who allows you to see behind that strength, treat it as an honor. If someone says, I'm not okay, don't make them regret being honest. If someone reaches for you, don't punish them for needing you. And if someone asks you to stay close, understand how much courage it may have taken to say those words. Because for some people, asking for closeness is harder than walking away, I know. Bonds, there was a time when I would rather have suffered in silence than admit I needed someone. I would rather have watched a person drift away than risk telling them, please don't go. But what kind of strength is that? What kind of pride convinces us that loneliness is better than honesty? Why do we act as if needing love is something to be ashamed of? We are human. Mendium, we are built for connection. We remember the people who were there. We carry the voices of those who believed in us. Then we become stronger because someone once looked at us when we were weak and said, I still believe in you. And perhaps the most beautiful relationships aren't the ones where two people pretend they don't need each other. And perhaps they are the ones where two people can say, I am capable on my own, but life is more meaningful with you in it. That is the kind of love I understand now. Not a love that traps, a love that supports, not a love that controls, a love that gives room to breathe and just not a love that says, you are all I have. Jen's a love that says, out of everything life has given me, you are someone I deeply value, and I don't want to lose what we have. Bane, that's why I'm asking you to stay close. I still want you to have your own dreams. Cleans, I want you to have your own life, your own identity, your own friendships, your own purpose. So I don't want you to disappear into me. Mend, I want us to walk beside each other as two people who remain whole while becoming stronger together. Then, because healthy love isn't losing yourself inside another person. It's finding someone who makes it safer to become more fully yourself. And if I have ever made you feel that you had to become smaller to stay close to me, then I want to do better. Blends. If I ever made you question your value, I want to repair what I can. Mendens. If I ever made you feel unseen, then let me see you now. I see that you are not perfect, and I don't need you to be. I see your fears. I see your strengths. I see the parts of you that still need time. I see the mistakes you've made and the lessons you've learned. And none of that makes you less worthy of love. In fact, it makes you real. And I don't want a perfect person. I want an honest connection. I want someone I can grow with, someone I can tell the truth to. Banged, someone who can tell me the truth even when it is difficult to hear. Band, because staying close doesn't mean avoiding every uncomfortable conversation. Lane, sometimes staying close means having the courage to walk through those conversations without abandoning each other. B, it means saying, I'm hurt, but I'm still here. Immense, it means saying, I don't understand you right now, but I want to. Demonstralience, it means saying we're struggling, but we don't have to become enemies. That is the kind of closeness I want. The kind that survives reality. Men's the kind that doesn't disappear when the excitement fades. Thangjap, the kind that becomes deeper after two people have seen each other, imperfect sides, and decided that honesty is still worth protecting. And perhaps that is why looking back can be so painful. Shendiance, because when you finally understand the value of someone, you also remember every moment you failed to show them. Means you remember the messages you never answered properly, the appreciation you never expressed, and the hugs you assumed you would always have another chance to give, the conversations you postponed, and the apologies you delayed because pride told you there was still plenty of time. But time is not something we own. And one of the saddest things in life is realizing that the moment you thought would always be available has quietly passed. Ben, so I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to assume there will always be another opportunity to say what my heart already knows. But I don't want to let fear turn gratitude into regret. I want you to know now, I appreciate you now, and I choose closeness now. Then, because tomorrow is never promised, and love should not have to wait until loss gives us permission to become honest. Ben, so if you're still here, if life still gives us the chance to speak, to listen, to laugh, to forgive, and to grow, then I want to protect that chance. I want to be more present. I want to listen better. I want to notice the things I once overlooked. I want you to feel appreciated while you're still close enough to hear it. Valence, because someday when I look back again, I don't want to say I wish I had told you. I want to say I told you whenever I had the chance. And maybe that's what love is really asking from us, not perfection, presence, not dramatic promises, consistency, not the ability to save each other from every pain, but the willingness to stay beside each other while healing, and the more I understand that, the more honest I become about what I want. But I don't want a life where we only remember each other. I want a life where we keep making memories. I don't want to speak about you in the past tense while secretly wishing you were still close. I want to keep discovering who you are becoming. I want to celebrate your victories. I want to sit beside you during your difficult days. I want to hear the stories you haven't told yet. I want to grow older and laugh about the things that once felt impossible to survive. I want us to look back one day and realize that staying close wasn't always easy, but it was worth it. Because the people who truly matter are not always the ones who make life perfect. There's main first, Mershadink. Sometimes they are simply the ones who make you feel that no matter how difficult life becomes, you don't have to face it with a completely empty hand. And if I have your hand to hold, not because I cannot walk without you, but because we have chosen to walk together, then maybe that is enough. Maybe that is more than enough, so please stay close, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, not because I'm asking you to give up your freedom. But stay close only if your heart also sees something worth protecting between us. And if it does, then I promise I won't keep taking your presence for granted. I won't assume you know what you mean to me. I won't let pride keep speaking when my heart is asking for honesty. I will tell you, I will show you, but I will make room for you because looking back taught me something I never want to forget. Some people become important so quietly that you don't notice the depth of their place in your life until you imagine losing them. And by then, sometimes the only honest thing left to say is, I can do many things alone. Men dears, I can survive difficult days. I can stand on my own feet. I can fight my own battles. Bounty, but life was never meant to be only about surviving. And when I look at everything behind me and everything waiting ahead, I know one thing with absolute honesty. I don't want to do this without you. Please stay close. I don't want to do this without you. Please stay close. And I know those words can sound frightening. Vengeance. Because the moment you tell someone they matter, you give them the power to see the part of you that pride spent years trying to hide. You admit that beneath all the strength, all the confidence, all the times you said, I'm okay, there was a heart quietly hoping that one particular person would not walk too far away. And maybe that person is you. Looking back, I realize how often I confused being alone with being strong. I thought if I never asked for help, I could prove that nothing could break me. But strength isn't refusing every hand that reaches for you. Sometimes strength is recognizing the hand that has been there all along and finally having the courage to hold it. But, men's, you don't have to save me. You don't have to fix every broken part of my life. Beans, you don't have to carry my responsibilities or give up your own dreams. I am not asking you to become my entire world. I'm asking you to remain a meaningful part of it. De Belson, because there is a difference between dependency and devotion. Dependency says, without you, I am nothing. Devotion says, I know who I am and I still choose you. Dependency tries to hold someone so tightly that they cannot breathe. Ben's devotion holds their hand and says, walk with me if your heart wants to, and that is what I want. Amendi is, I want you close, not because I want to possess you, but because life taught me how rare it is to find someone whose presence brings peace. Banged, some people enter your life and bring noise, others enter quietly and somehow make the noise disappear. Lend, you became the kind of person to me, the kind of person whose presence changes the atmosphere. The kind of person who doesn't need to do something extraordinary every day to matter. Sometimes just knowing you're there is enough. And maybe that's why I finally understand what I was afraid to admit. I don't need a perfect life, and I don't need every dream to happen exactly when I want it. I don't need the road ahead to be easy. Baines. But if life allows me to keep someone like you close, and I want to appreciate that gift while I still have it. Jen, because love should not always have to wait for tragedy to become honest. Mendiance. We should not have to lose people before we finally understand their value. Almost. We should not have to stand beside an empty space and say the words we were too proud to say when someone was standing there. Valenja, so let me be honest now. If I ever made you feel unimportant, I was wrong. The monst. If I ever acted like your presence was guaranteed, I was wrong. Leaned. If I ever let my silence make you question what you meant to me, then I wish I had spoken sooner. Because you deserve to know. You deserve to know that there were moments when your kindness carried me farther than you realized. And you deserve to know that some of my happiest memories have your presence somewhere inside them. Meaned. You deserve to know that when life became difficult, there were times when the thought of you gave me more comfort than any advice in the world. And maybe you never knew any of that. Maybe you thought you were simply passing through my life. Land, maybe you had no idea that you were becoming part of the reason I kept moving forward. Comengens, that is how some people change us quietly without demanding recognition, without making a speech. Penju, without even realizing the impact they have. And then one day we look back and see their fingerprints all over the person we have become. Maybe I am stronger today because you once believed in me. Beldum, maybe I am calmer because you showed me what peace feels like. Maybe I learned how to trust because you gave me a reason to stop being afraid of connection. Maybe I learned that I don't always have to pretend because you made honesty feel safer. And when I put all of that together, I can no longer call you just someone. Men's, you are not just a memory. You are not just a person I happen to meet. Belinda, you became part of my journey, and I don't want to pretend that losing that connection would mean nothing. Dan, because it would mean something, it would leave a space. Elaine, not a space that would destroy me because I am still responsible for standing on my own feet. Moline, but a space that I would feel. A space that no amount of pretending could erase. And perhaps that's one of the most mature things we can learn about love. Vance, you can be capable of living without someone and still deeply hope you never have to. Vance, you can survive their absence and still recognize that their presence made your life more beautiful. You can stand alone and still choose to stand beside someone. That choice is powerful. Vance, because real love is not built on fear, it is built on freedom. I want you close because I choose you. Yeah, and if you choose me too, then maybe we can build something that doesn't require either of us to disappear. And you don't have to lose yourself to love me. I don't have to lose myself to love you. Bond, we can remain individuals while becoming a team. We can have different dreams and still support each other. We can disagree and still remain respectful. We can need space without turning distance to abandonment. We can have difficult days without making each other the enemy. That's the kind of closeness I want. Not a connection that suffocates, a connection that strengthens, because the right person doesn't always make your problems disappear. Beleens, sometimes they simply remind you that you are bigger than the problem. The right person doesn't always tell you what you want to hear. Bonjees, sometimes they tell you what you need to hear and stay close enough to help you face it. The right person doesn't promise that life will never hurt. Lands, they remind you that pain feels different when someone genuinely cares whether you make it through. And when I think about you, that is what I understand now. I don't need you to make life perfect. I just don't want to keep walking through life pretending that your presence doesn't matter. It does. Genes more than I can explain in one conversation. Bellies more than I was able to admit when I was younger, more afraid and more determined to look strong. But I am no longer interested in appearing strong if it requires me to be dishonest. What is the point of protecting your pride if you lose the person your heart has been trying to protect? And what is the point of winning an argument if the silence afterward costs you someone you love? What is the point of waiting for the perfect moment when love may be asking you to speak now? There may never be a perfect moment. There may only be this one, this breath, this chance on this person standing close enough to hear you. And if I have learned anything from looking back, it is this: don't waste love by assuming there will always be more time. To say thank you, say I'm sorry, yuckin', say I miss you, say you matter, say please stay. Not as a command, as an invitation, not as a chain. Alien as an open hand, because the people who stay close should never feel like their presence goes unnoticed. And I want to become better at noticing. I want to notice when you're tired. Julius, I want to notice when you're quiet. Means I want to celebrate the things that make you happy, even when the rest of the world thinks they're small. Means I want to remember the stories you tell me. I want to ask about the dreams you're still chasing. Meh. I want to become someone whose presence gives you the same peace that yours has given me. Jans, because love should be mutual. I don't want to simply receive your care. I want to learn how to care for you better. Bonds, if you held me up during difficult moments, I want to be there when your strength disappears. Plans, if you listened to me when I needed someone, I want to listen when your heart becomes heavy. And if you believed in me when I was uncertain, I want to remind you of your strength when you forget it. Leans, that's what staying close should mean. Not one person constantly giving while the other person only receives. But two people taking turns being strong. Then two people saying, I've got you, when the other person needs to hear it. Then two people understanding that sometimes one carries more and sometimes the other does, and neither keeps score. Imagine having someone like that beside you, someone who doesn't ask, what can I get from you today? For an I get from you today. Vance, but asks, how can we get through this together? That kind of love changes people. Band, it teaches you that connection is not a weakness. Mulia, it is one of the reasons we find the strength to keep going. And maybe years from now, we will look back at this moment too. We will remember the uncertainty. We will remember the things we were afraid to say. Shum, we will remember the distance we almost allowed to grow between us. Elbean, and maybe we'll smile because we finally chose honesty. Maybe we'll say, I'm glad you told me. Man, I'm glad you didn't let pride speak for you. I'm glad you didn't pretend you were fine. Mainda, I'm glad you reached out. I'm glad you asked me to stay close. Beland, because sometimes one honest sentence changes the direction of an entire relationship, and maybe these words are mine. Bean, looking back, I realized I can't do this without you. Please stay close. Not because I am incapable without you, Vans, but because loving you has shown me that being capable and being connected are not opposites. I can be strong and still need comfort. I can be Anne. I can be strong and still need comfort. I can be independent and still value companionship. Bonzi, I can have my own dreams and still want to share the journey. But I can stand on my own and still reach for your hand. And perhaps that is the kind of love I want for the rest of my life. Being a love where neither person is afraid to say, I need you near. A love where honesty is stronger than ego. In a love where vulnerability is not punished. That's a love where two people don't wait until everything is falling apart before they remember to hold on to each other. So if you're listening to me now, hear me clearly. But I don't want to wait until your absence teaches me how much your presence mattered. I already know. I know when I look back. I know when I look at who I was before you. Which I know when I think about who I have become. And I know when I imagine the road ahead. And the future may be uncertain. Life may change us. There may be seasons when we feel close and seasons when we have to work harder to find our way back to each other. Lanes, but if your heart is willing, don't let one difficult season convince you that the whole journey has lost its meaning. Jane, stay close, talk to me, let me understand you, let me tell you the truth before silence turns into regret. Bully Andy, and if we ever lose our way, let's not be too proud to find our way back. Jamins, because some connections are worth fighting for, not fighting against each other, fighting for each other, fighting against the misunderstandings. Ban against the silence, against the fear, against the habits that make us forget how deeply we once cared. Planned, because the greatest tragedy is not always losing someone. Ben, sometimes it is realizing that you slowly let them go, while both of you were still standing there. For me, I don't want that to be our story. Ben, I want our story to be the one where when life became complicated, we became more honest. When distance appeared, we talked. When pain arrived, we talked. When pain arrived, we listened. When fear told us to run, we paused and remembered why we cared. And when we looked back at everything we had survived, we realized that the reason we were still standing wasn't because we never faced difficult days. It was because we learned not to face them alone. So please stay close. Lane, stay close if your heart still feels something worth protecting. Gian Stiao, stay close if you believe two imperfect people can keep learning how to love each other better. Stay close if you want a connection built not on perfection but on truth. And if you stay, I promise I will not keep treating your presence like something ordinary. Means I will remember what looking back taught me. Benjes, I will remember that the people we love are not guaranteed to remain within reach forever. Baines, I will remember to say the things that matter while you can still hear them. And I will remember that sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one who finally lowers their guard and says, without fear, without pride, and without pretending, no, I can face life, I can survive the storms, I can stand on my own. Beans, but after everything I've been through, everything I've learned, and everything I now understand about what your presence means to me. I don't want to do this without you, so please stay close.